I am here. Thanks so much, Marcy. And it's so great to see these familiar names coming up on the list of participants. So we really are excited about this, and we've got some great questions coming in today. We really do see this as an opportunity for you to extend, your time with me and that initial, session that you get. So some of you sent some questions in advance, and I've kind of done some slides to start out to address those questions, and then we would love to take questions throughout. So feel free to just type your question in the chat box. I'm going to switch over to video after we go through some of this content in the beginning, and then we can just have a conversation today over the next 45 minutes to an hour. So
Thanks, Catherine.
just to get things, yeah.
One quick thing, if people would like to ask your questions, if you'll just type "I have a question," I'll know to unmute you as well. So don't feel overwhelmed if you don't want to type the entire question. Just type that you have a question, and then I'll know to unmute so that we can get your question verbally as well. Sorry about that, Catherine.
No, that's great. I'm so glad to hear that. That's awesome. Makes it even more interactive, and we really can make it more like a conversation. So I'll skip the intro with me. I think most of you at this point that are calling in have worked with me already. So I'm going to skip on into kind of that first question that we got, which was around the salary question. So this alum wrote in and asked, what do I say when someone asks for my current salary or my salary requirements? And I believe there was also a question about whether or, why the employer was asking that question. And, this question became really prevalent early on in the process when the economy was really down. So it was a way for employers to kind of screen candidates and make sure that the candidates that they were moving forward with were in line with the salary that they were willing and able to pay. Now, since the economy has gotten better, this has actually put a lot of candidates at a disadvantage. And it gives the company an advantage in the negotiation process because they know, where you're coming from and what your most recent salary was. So, unfortunately, this also puts women in particular at a disadvantage because we are typically paid less than our male counterparts. So now that things are picking up, there is a demand for talent right now. Companies need talent. My suggestion is to try not to give that number, right, when you're in a conversation with someone. There are some cases where it is required in a job application and you will not be able to submit without filling that information in. But if you are in a conversation, a screening call, this typically comes up with a recruiter and they say, what is your current salary? I would say, I understand why you're asking that question, but I would like to let you know that my current range for my job search right now is in the $50,000 range. Does that work for you? Right? So let them know the range you're going for, but don't give them your current salary, especially if it's not where you want it to be. If they push and say, I'm sorry, but I'm really going to need you to give me a number, I would say, again, I understand that you are trying to find candidates within a certain range. I would not feel comfortable disclosing that number. As I said, I'm focusing my search in the $50,000 range and would really prefer to focus on the value that I can bring to the organization versus a number. So again, if somebody is continuing to push you here and they're with that company, I mean, my thought is that really a company we want to work for, right? If they're really going to get combative over this question, most people will kind of go with you on that. If you get the question about what are your salary requirements, this is a chance for you to, again, kind of flip it back to them a little bit. So you could say something like, I understand that salary is an important part of this process and this discussion. I am more than happy to give you a number or a range, but if you could provide a range for me to work within, that would be helpful. Typically, people are okay with this, and the hiring manager or the HR person can give you a range. Interestingly enough, I was actually talking with someone a few months ago. We met at a Panera and we were chatting, and there was a gentleman sitting next to us, and we were going through this scenario exactly, and he said, actually, I hate to interrupt, but I've been in HR for 20 years, and there really isn't any reason why I wouldn't give somebody a range. He said that makes perfect sense. We want to find a meeting ground, a common ground. So this answer has been kind of solidified by someone else who actually does the negotiation on the other end. You want to go into these conversations having done your research on the back end. It's really important that you understand what the market value is for someone with your skills and experience, and kind of understand where you fall based on the responsibility, so that you feel confident when they do give you a range, whether that's a range you want to work within, and where you fall within that range. So hopefully this is helpful, but that is certainly a tricky question. And overall, my recommendation is try not to give a number and focus on a range that you feel comfortable with. And interestingly enough, there are some lawmakers who are pushing to kind of ban this question because it does put women at such a disadvantage. Okay, so the other question, Marcy, what was the question that came in? I believe it was about how do I talk to people in a networking scenario when I don't exactly know what it is I want to do. Is that correct?
I need to go look really quickly.
Okay, sorry.
How about you go with that one, and I'll let you know if it's different.
Okay, perfect. I believe that was the question. It was, I know that, I should be out there kind of talking to people and leveraging my network, but I don't know exactly what I want to do. How do I have this conversation? And so I wanted to put this slide up just because self-assessment is so important when it comes to a job search, and really knowing, who you are and what your skill set is and what you're looking for, so that you can articulate your value, but also evaluate different options, right? So this is an exercise that I recommend for a lot of clients. It's called the flower exercise, and it's part of What Color Is Your Parachute, which has been around for ages and ages and updated a million times. Yes, Marcy, I saw that question about whether the deck will be available. I'm happy to share this afterwards. We'll have the recording as well on the website. But so this is a flower exercise, but sorry, I got a little distracted. This is a flower exercise in What Color Is Your Parachute, and it's really helpful for you to actually start to put pen to paper and write out these different aspects that come together to create a career. So the first thing that we start with really are your favorite skills, right? What are you good at? But more importantly, what are you good at that you really enjoy? Because sometimes we get really good at things that we don't want to do anymore, and that's important to note, right? So this is actually a version that I filled out for myself as just a way to kind of articulate some of these things. So what are my favorite skills? I really enjoy building relationships with people. I like writing. I enjoy research, presenting information, developing programs, and connecting people and resources. So when I thought about what am I good at and what do I really like to do, these were the things that came into play. Favorite working conditions. So for me, I like a little bit of flexibility. I want a mix of team and individual work, working with other people, my interests, so what is particularly of interest to me. This could be from a career standpoint, but also from, a personal standpoint. Values are helping others, feeling valued, adding value, teaching, building confidence. What type of people and environment do I want to be in? And then, salary. Salary is going to be a part of this process. We have to have an income. We have to bring in some money. So it's good for you to understand where you fit there. And then geography, obviously, where do you want to be? And from here, you can start to evaluate what are my need to haves versus what are my nice to haves, right? We're not always going to get 100% of what we want in a job, but we need to understand what are the key skills that we want to use, and what are the deal breakers in terms of some of these other pieces of the puzzle. So let's say, I worked on this flower exercise and I knew I needed to go out and talk to people, but I did not know that career development and career coaching was a career path. How do I take this information and start to articulate it in a clear and concise way with my network, with friends and family as a starting point, to start to get some ideas and put some context around what I want to do. It's a lot better for me to go to my contacts with some sort of idea in mind versus, I want to make a change, but I'm not sure what I want to do. Do you have any ideas for me? Right? That doesn't give people anything to go on. And even though they want to help, they're not going to be able to do anything with that information. But if I go to somebody and I say, I'm looking to make a change, I really want to leverage, my key skills, which I think are writing, research, presenting information, and building relationships, and combine that with my interests, which are, women in business, resumes, and different career paths. Any ideas of how I might start to look in this market, or any ideas of, how that comes together and things that I might want to look at, right? That gives people something concrete. So everybody's flower is going to be different. Everybody's skills and interests and values are going to be different. But kind of cull that down into a clear and concise message and use that to help start that conversation with people. Hopefully that helps answer that question. Let's see, the other question I believe was, and actually I have them pulled up right here. So in this case, it's somebody who is wondering about their resume, and they're not a salesperson. They can't say they, brought in $100,000 in revenue this year. How do I add value? How do I show that I can add value in a resume bullet if I can't quantify something? So I thought it might be helpful to put some sample bullets up here. So the key in my mind is if you can't quantify it, think about the goal. What were you trying to do with that initiative or that project, right? So in this case, somebody came, it was an alum that I was talking to, and the bullet was developed and managed project workflow by introducing a new project management system. So what did that do for the organization? What was the goal of the organization, and what was your specific role? What was the action that you took, and what was the goal of that action? So in this case, the person actually identified and implemented a software system that streamlined workflows and enhanced communication across multiple projects and research teams. So just adding that little bit of scope helps to show how you added value in that situation. Similarly, with someone in HR, you could write, I wrote an employee manual or wrote employee manuals, but that doesn't tell me your area of expertise. It doesn't tell me, what the value of that was. So we just added a little context, wrote employee manuals covering disciplinary procedures, code of conduct, FMLA policy, and benefits information. So now we've got some more scope. It's showing her areas of expertise, and it's also getting some keywords in that in HR for different positions they would be searching for from an online perspective. To think about the goal of that action. Why did you do it? And what were you hoping it would do? Or what did it do? What was the result? Even if we can't quantify that, it's still valuable. I think it's the last question, but we can definitely jump over to questions that are coming in. But this question was from someone who has recently signed up to go to a networking event over the holidays for a professional organization, and she is petrified of networking and wondered, how do I start talking to people I don't know? So first of all, I would say try not to think about networking as networking. People don't like that word. They feel like it's kind of yucky. It feels like I need something from you. So I'd really rather you think about it as relationship building. I am going to this event with the goal of building a relationship with one or two people I don't know. Just making a human connection, right? And the key really to building relationships is to focus on the other person and to listen, right? Listening can be so much more important than talking, right? It really shows a genuine interest in the person and builds rapport. So, a question that's great to start with is just tell me about you. If you don't know this person, tell me about you. And that allows them to kind of take that question and go in any direction that they want, whether that's personal or professional. And maybe if it's personal, you connect on a personal level, which would be lovely. And at a holiday party in particular, I wouldn't jump right in to work, right, and ask them a bunch of questions about their company and their job and all that stuff. I would take a more personal approach. How are you staying in town for the holidays? What are you looking forward to? If they go down the professional route, then just ask questions that focus on them. So, what drew you to company X? Tell me more about your experience there. Where's your focus now? It seems like you've had a number of different roles. Where's your focus now? That type of thing. Something that allows them to talk about their experience and things that are important to them. Another little trick that I recommend for people, if it's a professional organization, so like the American Marketing Association or one of those types of organizations that's hosting an event, volunteer. Email the person who's coordinating the event and ask if they need any volunteers that day. Maybe they need somebody to hand out name tags or greet people or point them in the right direction or hand out programs. It gives you a reason to kind of interact with other people, and sometimes that makes it less awkward starting out, or at least makes you a familiar face if you want to follow up with that person later on in the event. So, if you go sit next to someone, you already have some facial recognition because you handed them your program. So think about doing something like that, and going forward, maybe volunteering for a committee, right? It's an easy way to kind of build some closer relationships with people in your area of interest without feeling like you're forced to start a discussion at, the breakfast table when you are eating a bagel and listening to a speaker. Okay, let's see. So that was the last writing question that we have. It looks like we've got some people that are writing in. So let me switch over here. Hi. So I am here and ready to answer any questions that have come in. Marcy, anybody have anything that they want to chat about?
I don't see any right now, so I'll just say let's open it up, and if you'd like to ask a question live, just sort of chat and say I do or I would or something to that effect. As I said, this webinar and session is only as fruitful as the questions we get, so hopefully there's something out there that someone is dying to ask or dying to know.
Yes, so anybody who has a question, like Marcy said, feel free to chat it in. It looks like there is one about what job boards are good for finding opportunities. So what are some good job sites to search for employment? So there's a lot of job sites out there. Obviously, there is Indeed, which is probably the best one in terms of aggregating all of the data from different sites. So like it pulls from CareerBuilder and Monster and company sites and all that type of thing. If you're looking for flexible jobs, there's a Flex Jobs site. Idealist is great if you're looking for nonprofit type of opportunities. If you're looking in higher education, there's a specific higher education job board. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Obviously, LinkedIn is a great resource, and I love LinkedIn as a job search tool because it has the postings, but it also gives you some additional information. Sometimes there is a way to see who posted the job. So, in that case, you can apply through the site, which you're going to have to do, but then you have somebody you can follow up with, which is hugely important. This day and age, it is too easy for people to, set up some sort of algorithm to, shoot their resume off to, whatever, position has a certain keyword in it. So, in CareerBuilder and Monster, you can set it up. If this job says, marketing, then I want to apply, right? And what that means is that employers are getting bombarded with resumes. Half of those people may be qualified and half of them aren't. And so they get 300 plus applications for every position that's open, and they're scanning through them, and half of the people don't seem to be qualified. So that's frustrating. It's frustrating for the applicant because oftentimes we get lost in the shuffle of 300 plus resumes, and it's frustrating for HR and recruiters and hiring managers because they have to wade through all of this information. And so what happens in many cases, for these large, well-known companies, is that they go with referrals. And if they have 300 resumes in their online database, of people who've applied for a position and they have 5 or 6 referrals, they're going to go with those people. They're never going to open that stack of resumes. They are not actually going to read every single resume. Even sometimes with the keyword search, if you have every single keyword in your resume, we're still relying on technology to pick you out of that stack. So my biggest suggestion for people, certainly you're going to have to apply online. And again, Indeed, is one place to kind of get a general sense of who's hiring in your area for certain positions. But I really recommend a more proactive approach, thinking about the companies that you want to work for that have a need for someone with your skill set, and then identifying contacts within those companies that you can start to build relationships with. I want you to be one of those 5 people that's already in their pipeline. If for whatever reason you do not have a contact within the organization, or something comes up and you haven't been able to kind of get traction within the organization at that point, then I would say, follow up. Obviously, apply through the online system, but then go to LinkedIn. See if you can find the recruiter who posted it, or do some digging into the company structure to see if you can figure out who this person would be reporting to, or if it says, reports to director of such and such, then go to LinkedIn and see if you can find the director of such and such and contact them. I really, really think in this market, even with this war for talent that we have going on, human connections are going to be the most meaningful part of your job search, and we have to become more than a piece of paper. So a polite email to someone to say, I saw this posting, I have applied through the formal channels, but I'm following up with you, to express my interest. Here's a bit about my background, highlight a couple things that align with what they're looking for. I hope to have the opportunity to talk with you when you move forward in the process. That was a long answer, but hopefully that helps.
Catherine, I think you can see the next question. I've got two other ones once you see that, but I can read it aloud if you'd like as well.
That would be great.
So we've got one that, from Jen that says, I'm transitioning into a new career after 18 years in one field. I've completed a master's in my new field, and I'm having a hard time articulating how my previous experience translates. You mentioned what color is your parachute earlier in the webinar. Would this be a good resource? What advice would you have?
Yeah, so that would be a really good resource. There's some great activities in that book that help you kind of articulate your skill set and your past experience and help connect it to your new venture. This is tricky, right? Because you've been in one field for so long, even with your master's and your excitement for this new field, sometimes it's hard for us to really picture or understand, what skill set translates. It's new and it's exciting and it's scary all at the same time, and I totally get that. But kudos to you. Congratulations for completing your master's. That's huge. So something I might do, if you know the types of jobs that you'd be looking for, and actually that would be a great question. I don't know if you have a microphone, but if you knew the kind of jobs that you were looking for, so let's say you have a sense of what that job title would be within an organization, then I would start to look at those job descriptions or look at people who are doing the jobs that you would like to be doing going forward, right? So looking at their LinkedIn profiles, what are the skills and experience that they are highlighting on that site? If you have a job description, I would actually print it out. I don't know, I'm a little bit old school, but I like to print things, I like to see them, and I would go through it with a highlighter, and I would highlight the words that seem to repeat, the key skills that they're looking for. So let's say they're looking for somebody who can manage multiple projects and keep them on time and on budget. And they're looking for somebody who can work collaboratively with different groups. And they're looking for somebody who can analyze data and pull out, identify trends and use that information to help inform business strategy, whatever the case may be. Look for those things that are repeating. Those are often the key skills that they're looking for in those positions, and then go back to your background and think of the best examples that articulate that skill set. So where were you managing projects before? Where have you used data to inform a business decision? When have you worked with different groups within the organization to help reach a common goal, right? And those are the experiences that we want to highlight both on paper, on LinkedIn, and then in conversation with potential employers. What we try to do, and this would be a great way to use your coaching session as well, is not only identify those experiences, but then think about how to strip the industry language out. Because sometimes that's the piece that's difficult, is that we're enmeshed in that industry language. Every industry has its own kind of ways to describe things, and sometimes it's hard to kind of rid yourself of that. And so what we need to do, and again, I think this is helpful if you can sit down with somebody, but identify those key skills, look at your past experience, and try to figure out the best examples of how you've used that skill set, and then try to call out the specific language that wouldn't align with the new role, and or kind of replace it with some language that would make sense within their organization. The other thing to do, if you haven't done this already or haven't started to do this, is to talk to people who are in those jobs. Do that informational interviewing. Talk to folks who graduated from the program, maybe even just a few years ago, who are still really connected to that experience, and say, I'm a fellow recent grad trying to transition into this space, and I'd love to have a 20 to 30-minute call with you to just learn more about your day-to-day and what that actually looks like, so that I can better kind of translate my experience, right? You're not asking for a job. You're not asking for anything that they can't provide easily. It's just, I just want to pick your brain about what you do and how I might start to make that transition. So I would really encourage you to do that as well, in addition to just kind of looking at job descriptions and looking at profiles online.
Thanks, Catherine. We've got another question, which I think is very related in some ways to the previous, but I just want to make sure we ask this one as well in case there are slightly differences. If you've been working freelance for a number of years, what is the best way to move back into the full-time workforce? Or how do you convince employers that you are ready to work full-time?
Yes, that is so tricky. And this is a question that definitely comes up a lot. And people do freelance for a lot of different reasons. And then they go back into full-time employment for a lot of different reasons. But there can be a hesitation among employers at times, will this person fit back in a corporate environment, right? They're used to this certain amount of flexibility, doing things the way they want to do them. Will they be a good fit for our organization? My thought here, and it kind of any kind of transition, whether it's moving from one industry to another, one function to another, into entrepreneurship, out of entrepreneurship, networking and relationship building and follow-up is going to be incredibly important here, because on paper, we can highlight the skill set. We can do our best to use the key words and the language, but without a human connection, there could still be a question. So looking at those companies that you think would be a good fit, building those connections with people within the organization so that you get referred in versus applying online. When somebody says, I want to recommend this person for the position, I've talked with them, they've got a great skill set, and they're really eager to get back into a corporate environment, I, as the hiring manager or the HR person, am much more willing to go with that and kind of ignore the questions that may have come up just with an online posting. You can certainly address it in a cover letter, kind of why you want to go back into an environment, into the corporate environment. I focus first on the fact that you can do the job, and here's some skills and example of me demonstrating those skills. By the way, I'm really eager to go back into a corporate environment, and here's why. And probably, why your position in particular or your company in particular is a good fit for me. But the thing there is that we can't guarantee anybody's going to read the cover letter. So, that only does us so much good. And again, if they have 5 referrals, they're probably going to start there. So I would say, really honing in on the companies that you think would be the best fit for you, and then starting to build some connections. Also, if you do apply, sending that follow-up email to someone to say, kind of explain why you want to go back to full-time employment would be a good idea.
Thanks, Catherine. We've got a question from Emily that says, what are the best ways to hold yourself accountable to networking, career development work when you're happy with your current role?
Mm-hmm. That is a great question, because when we have a job, building in time to do those proactive, career development tasks, they often fall to the wayside. My suggestion would be, if you have a job and you're happy with your job, and you're happy with your company and your industry, a couple of things you could do. One would be to make sure that you are kind of getting involved in 1 or 2 professional organizations. So if you're in marketing, again, looking at the local chapter of the American Marketing Association. If you're in higher education, looking at those professional organizations. Joining them, but also getting involved in some way, joining a committee, making sure that you actually, those things are sponsored by your employer typically. Employers are happy to let you go to the AMA meeting, but that's only going to do you so much good. I think if you have a reason to engage with people within that organization, that becomes a much more fruitful way to build relationships and network with people who are in different companies but in a similar role. I think volunteering for committees within your organization, right? Whether that's the employee engagement committee, or whether that's the strategic planning committee, or whether that's I don't know, the fun committee. Whatever it is, but finding ways to be visible to people outside of your immediate team. Ways to get more visibility with senior leadership. I would take advantage of those opportunities. And also other opportunities that just come up, being willing to say yes, even if it's something you're not incredibly excited about. If the boss sends out an email and says, I have tickets to this game, the first 5 people that, email me can go with me and sit in my box, or whatever the case may be. Even if you don't really care about basketball or football, go for it. Go sit and interact with different people that you wouldn't interact with on a daily basis. I remember at one point when I was in higher education, and the vice chancellor sent out an email to our department and said, I have 5 tickets to sit with me at my table at this awards banquet. And I, of course, immediately emailed him and I said, I would love to go. And his assistant wrote back and said, thank goodness, because people just don't seem to be interested. And I thought, why would you not want to sit next to the vice chancellor, right? Take the opportunity to do it. At least become more than an email signature within the organization. So I would say those would be some suggestions. Also, just putting time on your calendar. For me, that's something I have to do. I have to, if it is not on my Google Calendar, it is not going to happen. So maybe, you go in and, on 2 days a month, maybe the first of the month and the end of the month, you say, set up coffee meeting with new contact, or reconnect with old contact, and just go back, set up a coffee meeting with somebody you used to work with that doesn't work there anymore. Or set up a meeting with somebody in another department that you've emailed with but never actually met in person. Build time in your calendar for this, and think about ways to engage outside of your organization, but also inside your organization. Thank you.
We've got a question from Sally. Sally has over 30 years of experience and is in a situation now where she is in involuntary retirement because of budget cuts. She's just wondering, she's been contacted and interviewed by several contract agencies, but they have not followed up. The hiring manager hasn't followed up. She's in her 60s, and she wants to know, how do you deal with ageism? She still would love to work and has a lot of experience to offer.
Yeah. Sally, I'm sorry to hear that. That's incredibly frustrating, I know, and it sounds like you want to work, and the decision to retire was not yours, and that is frustrating and disappointing, and I'm sorry to hear that. But I'm really excited to hear that you want to get back to work, and it sounds like you're starting to have conversations, which is a great move in the right direction. I do understand that there can be concerns around ageism. I will say it's less prevalent as it used to be, mainly because people don't retire at 65. As much as like they used to. So people are working longer. It's not unusual for people to work well past 65 because they have to or because they want to. So I hope that's not the reason that you are being you're not being contacted by hiring managers, but it could be. Now my question in those situations is always do you want to work for an organization that is going to base their decision off of your age? Probably not, but still you'd like to get to that interview process. So a couple things to think about. One, from a resume standpoint, you do not have to include your graduation year. If that obviously puts you in a certain age bracket, so I would remove that if it is on there. I would also, in terms of content, really only build out the last 10 to 15 years at the most. Really, employers care most about the last 10 years. The chances of them asking you about that first job out of school at this point are slim to none. So I would build out content around the last 10 years. If there are jobs or titles or companies that you feel like add value that you don't want to part with, you can still list, previous experience includes, or previous roles include, and list them there at the end. But again, I wouldn't include dates. From a social media standpoint, obviously LinkedIn is an incredible resource when you're looking for a job. I would make sure that you have a picture. For whatever reason, studies show that recruiters and hiring managers spend 90% of their time on your photo. I guess that's human nature. It is what it is. I'd have a photo where you look, you're looking at the camera, you're smiling. Really you just want to look engaging. And I would make sure that content is up to date and that you're using the site, because LinkedIn is a modern job search tool, so we want to show that you understand the modern process. So that can make you appear a little more up to date on how things are going from a job search perspective these days. So again, I would focus on the last 10 years on LinkedIn as well. At some point in the process, you may need to include information further back. But really, I would make sure you're focusing on the last 10 years and that you're honing in on the skill set that you have that matches with those opportunities. And outside of recruiters are great. I would go and I would reach out to former colleagues who may have gone to other places. I would reach out to, other UNC alumni that work at companies of interest or who are in the roles that you are hoping to, secure. Unfortunately, this is a tricky time of year in terms of postings. There's less postings and not a lot of hiring between now and the new year, just because it's hard to get everybody in one room. But it is a good time to do that outreach and maybe try to set up a couple calls or coffee meetings with people to kind of re-engage and let them know that you're looking in hopes of kind of being in that pipeline in January, February when things start to pop again. Hopefully that helps. Again, if you wanted to set up a session, that would be something, you know, we could talk about in detail and really go through your materials.
So, Catherine, that's the last question that I see on my end. Would you just double check and make sure you didn't get a private one that maybe I may have missed?
Yes, here's I'm scanning through everything now. I'm, again, happy to stay on for another few minutes if people have questions. I think we've hit them so far. And we've got this slide up here. If you did want to set up a coaching session, you email Marcy and she will connect us. Again, these are really great questions. If you haven't used your session, you know, your complimentary session, would love to chat with you and help troubleshoot.
And if there are those of you who asked one question and you have another question, we still have more time. So there's no cap on the number of questions. So just let us know. We're here for a few more minutes.
I know somebody asked about that slide. So what if we, I'm going to leave it on this slide for a second just because I think somebody wanted to reference that later. So.
And if you're looking at it on your computer, you'll see a little arrow at the top of it that is going to the left and to the right. You can sort of expand it and make it larger as well.
I might just take this second to plug the other webinars that we have up on the website. If there's certain things that have piqued your interest, like the self-assessment or kind of the job search process and how to go about identifying companies and doing that outreach, you know, all of these topics are covered in detail in those webinars, which are housed on the site. So if you have time over the holidays, it'd be a great time to go back and watch a couple of those. There's one on resumes, there's one on interviewing, one on making a transition, all sorts of topics. So we did kind of want to do these periodically as well, just as an opportunity for you guys to check in, maybe follow up after we have a session together. Hope this was valuable for you all. And if there aren't any more questions, again, I'm happy to stay on, but happy holidays. I hope you all have a great holiday season and a happy new year, and I hope to meet with a lot of you in 2018.
Ditto.
I cannot believe that Christmas is 2 weeks away and the new year is 3 weeks away. My mind is blown. This year flew by.
We'll hang out a couple more minutes. Again, it doesn't seem we have any additional questions, but we're here just in case someone is typing feverishly and just hasn't had a chance to get to the end of the question. I'm going to say that we don't have any questions. So in order to save everyone, or give it, as we people say, return 9 minutes of your time from today's webinar. I hope that everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.